Well, grab a Bible and open up to Lamentations chapter 3. Last time we said that this is a book that's written about the 2.5-year lockdown that went on in Jerusalem and how they were taken into captivity into other countries. And it's a lament looking back on those things and the suffering they faced because of their sin. And now Israel, because of all that they faced and gone through, they're plagued with guilt, with worry and turmoil. And Lamentations is written in response to all of this. And it's a lament. It's a prayer of grieving over sin and all that has happened. And it's a longing for restoration. And we see this in the book. We saw it last time. In our passage today, we get to the center of the book and the message of hope that it brings in the darkest of days. Israel had faced the darkest of days, and we see here a message of hope that they have in those dark days. And we all face dark days, don't we? Worry and anxiety, turmoil, grief, guilt over our sin. These are things that we face. We all face this. The question is, how will we deal with it? How will we deal with those dark days so that they don't destroy us and cause us to distrust in God? If we don't deal properly with our dark days, they will be destructive. Their destructive powers will start with a little trickle in the mind, the little trickle of a thought, and then they'll ruin our lives as they grow into a raging river of destruction. Corrie ten Boom said about this, about worry, she said, "Worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow." Worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. It's so true. Worry, along with fear, grief, and all these things will greatly affect our health and our spiritual well-being, and they will destroy us. They will swamp over us. But they don't do anything. They only ruin us. Worry only ruins in the moment. It doesn't do anything for tomorrow. And some of you are swamped at the moment with worries, with burdens. Some of you are swamped by the guilt of sin and all the damages it has brought. Some of you are struggling with the lockdown and the mental struggles that it's bringing on your life. Some of you are fearing death at the moment, or you're facing great stress because of the pressures that are coming up in your life. And today I want us to be free from these burdens, especially free from the burden of sin, as we see God's mercy in this passage, but also free from the burdens of worry, pain, suffering, and the turmoil that comes up again and again in our lives. I want us to be free from these things and instead put our hope in God. But how do we have this hope? How do we hope in God? Well, as I said, turn to Lamentations 3, because here in this chapter, in verses 1 to 18, Jeremiah is in despair. He feels rejected by God. And then in verse 19 to 20, we see Jeremiah remembers the affliction that he's gone through, the bitterness that has come from his sin, from the sin of Israel, and the punishment that it brought. And it's at this moment of deep despair. He's in absolute despair. It's at this moment whilst feeling pain and lament over the sin and over the suffering that they faced and over the fierce anger that God has displayed. As they are feeling this deep moment of despair, Jeremiah is able to call something to mind, and he's able to have hope. He's able to have hope. Like we said last time, seeing the damage of sin, seeing the destruction of sin, and lamenting over it is the pathway to hope. So how does Jeremiah have hope here, though? What does he recall to mind? It says he recalls this to mind and he has hope in verse 21. What does he recall to mind, and how can we have hope? Well, firstly, we must remember God's faithfulness is forever. Have a look. Lamentations 3 verse 22 says this: "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end." The point here is that God's faithfulness is lasting. It's forever. It continues on. Depending on your translation here, there's two different translations here. Either the verse is going to be saying God's faithfulness never ends, or that we are not consumed because God's faithfulness never ends. Either way, the point is still the same. And at the beginning of verse 22 as well, it said there, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. God's covenant love is being talked about here, which shows his loyalty and his faithfulness. When God goes into covenant with his people and makes promises to them, it shows that he has a lasting faithfulness to them and that he has a lasting steadfast love to them. Though we are unfaithful, though we live lives that deserve the horrors shown in this book, God is faithful. He keeps his word. He keeps his promises to show mercy. He keeps steadfast love and shows steadfast love. What a God we have. This is the God we can know. And this is the God that Jeremiah recalls. And that's why he has hope. This should bring deep hope. God's mercies, his steadfast love, they are forever. They are lasting. God's faithfulness is forever. But also we see here, the second point, God's faithfulness is fresh. Have a look. We see it in verse 23. It says here, talking about his mercies and his faithfulness, verse 23 says, they are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. This is the second thing we need to remember. We need to remember that God's faithfulness is fresh. We receive new mercies every day. The Lord provides hour by hour, day by day mercies for troubles that we are facing. He gives us strength for the troubles we are going to face and do face. He doesn't just give us something once off and then expect that to last forever and get us through the rest of our life. No, every day he gives us the mercy. Every trouble we face, he gives us the mercy and the strength that we need for that moment. Isn't that amazing? There's a hymn that I love that really shows this. I mean, I could quote the hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness, but there's another one that really shows this wonderful truth. It's a hymn called Day by Day, and it shows the message of these verses. Let me say a few lines from it. It says, day by day, and with each passing moment, strength I find to meet my trials here. Trusting in my Father's wise bestowment, I've no cause for worry or for fear. He whose heart is kind beyond all measure gives unto each day what he deems best. Lovingly, it's part of pain and pleasure, mingling toil with peace and rest. Every day the Lord himself is near me, with a special mercy for each hour. In every hour, the Lord provides what we need. In 1 Corinthians 10, verse 13, it shows there how God, he doesn't test us beyond what we can bear. And as well, he doesn't expect us to find all the resources for ourselves in tough situations that we face. He gives new mercies every day. And like Matthew chapter 6, verse 34 says, it says, therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious about itself. Sufficient for the day are the troubles therein. This is exactly what Lamentations is saying. It's the flip side of it, isn't it? New mercies will be given every day, Lamentations says. And here we see sufficient for the day are their own troubles. So do not worry. New mercies are given every day. And so the trouble of that day is enough. And we should not be anxious about tomorrow. We should not be anxious about tomorrow. So often in our lives, we look ahead. We're always looking ahead to the troubles that may come, to the things that we think we're going to face. And then we try to solve them right now. Right now we try to gain the resources to face those troubles. But God doesn't give mercies today for tomorrow's troubles. He gives the mercy and strength we need for tomorrow's troubles tomorrow. God gives mercies and the mercies that we need in the moment that we need them. We're not to worry about our troubles, our future troubles, and try to provide for all the future troubles that we think we're going to face. We're not to worry and try to gain all the resources that we think we might need in life. We have a tendency to do that, to look ahead, to always look ahead and try to have all the resources that we need to face difficulty. But we need to remember, God gives the mercy we need, hour by hour, day by day. His mercy is fresh in every trouble that we need. And oh, how we need to hear this, so that we don't depend on our own strength and instead depend on God, depend on His strength, and so that we won't be crushed by worries and by cares and by turmoil in our life. If we're always trying to provide for future troubles in our own resources, we are going to get destroyed by worry and stress and anxiety. An example of this for me and Grace was when Grace gave birth to Valley. She had some complications at the birth, and the hospital that we were at weren't able to deal with patients and take on patients with those complications. They normally wouldn't do this. And I remember Psalm 23 helping us through that moment when we first heard the news and there was no good news. And Psalm 23 renewed our trust in God and showed how He is with us in the valleys. And God was merciful to us in the end. A bit later, we found out that there happened to be a doctor there that day from another hospital who was specialized in that type of birth and was able to do that type of birth and deal with those complications. We could have worried and become fearful in the moment that we first heard about the complications. But what would have that done? It would have done nothing. It would have done nothing. We couldn't do anything. Our worrying could have done nothing. And instead, God showed mercy when we needed it. He gave mercy when we needed it. And even if Valley had died, even if she had been taken, God would have given the mercy that we needed in that moment to face that trouble. So we need to remember here, as Lamentations teaches us, that God gives mercies in the moment that we need it. He gives the mercies we need in the moment that we need them. Verse 23 says, His mercies are new every morning. So for you, when you're up late, maybe tonight, when you wake up tomorrow morning and you're worrying about work, you're worrying about school, you're worrying about your friends, you're worrying about diseases or deadlines that are coming up, know that God gives you the mercy you need for that day. Don't worry. Don't try to get the future resources that you think you're going to need. Instead, rely upon God and the mercy that He gives. Don't get caught in that moment by the endless what-if thinking that we so often get caught by. It's so draining. It does nothing. Don't jump to conclusions and blow up a small situation so that it takes control of your mind and your life. Don't always be looking at a problem and just thinking of the worst case scenario that will happen and thinking that's what's going to happen. It's definite. And don't get to a problem and just stress and fret over the problem, trying to solve it in your strength. Instead, rely on God. Rely on the mercies that He gives in the moment that we need them. If we don't do this, and if we instead just run to our own strength and run to always worrying and run to always thinking, what if this, what if this, what if that? We're going to be so drained. We're going to be destroyed. We're going to be burdened by so much pressure. And God doesn't want us to be self-sufficient, trying to figure out everything on our own. He wants to be relied on. He wants us to rest on Him. He shows mercy, and His mercies are fresh every day. They're fresh day by day for the troubles that we face. They're fresh every day for the Christian in all that we face. But even more so, most importantly, God's mercy is new every morning if you're not saved. Come to Him if you don't have His mercy to be saved. He has new mercy, and He's willing to forgive. Come to Him. But thirdly, how can we have hope? How can we have hope? Well, we've seen remember God's faithfulness. It's forever. Remember God's faithfulness is forever. Remember God's faithfulness is fresh. And thirdly, remember God's faithfulness is our foundation for hope. Verse 24 says, "The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in Him." When it says there that the Lord is my portion, it's emphasizing the foundation of hope that God is. Portion in the Old Testament was used to describe something that belongs to someone. It's their portion, it's theirs. Here Jeremiah is saying that the Lord is all he has, all that he needs. The Lord is his portion. The Lord is all that he needs. And it's because of this that he has hope in God. God is our portion. God is your portion. God is your foundation. He's a strong foundation. So build your hope on Him. Build the hope in your life upon God, the strong foundation that He is. And build your hope on Him because of His great faithfulness. The faithfulness of God, His mercies and His compassions. This is what we must cherish. And this is our portion. And it's the foundation that we must build all our hope upon. And so if you don't have this, as I urged before, I urge you to get it. If the Lord isn't your portion and isn't the foundation you're building your life upon, if you don't have the mercies that you need, if you don't have the mercy of God to be forgiven, then I urge you to get it. And verse 25 to 26 show us how. It says, "The Lord is good to those who wait for Him, to the soul who seeks Him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." If you don't have salvation, if you don't have God's mercy to know that you're forgiven, you need to seek it. And even for the Christian, we need to seek it every day. But if you don't have the mercy to know that you are forgiven, seek it. Seek salvation from the Lord. Wait upon God to give it. He can. God is a faithful and merciful God. He gives what is undeserved to us. That's mercy. He shows mercy. He doesn't give us the punishment that we deserve. He forgives. Jesus came and Christ showed mercy, and God has showed mercy when He removed the horrors of sin. When Jesus dealt with all of the horrors of sin and all the suffering that comes with sin, He's shown mercy, and He came so that we can enjoy God's faithfulness now. We can enjoy His steadfast love in our life, and we can enjoy fresh mercies every day as Christians. May God open your eyes so that you see sin, and so that you see sin's effects, and so that you see the damage of sin in your suffering, so that you come running to God for mercy, so that you seek mercy from God, seek salvation from God, and so that you wait upon Him, and so that you prize Jesus as your only hope. Don't wait to do this. If you haven't done this, do not wait to do this. Because as verse 27 says, it says, Lamentations 3, verse 27, it says, "It is good for a man to bear the yoke while he is young." What is that yoke? That yoke of seeking God, waiting upon God. It is good to do this while you are young. Come to Jesus now. For the older you get, the harder it will get. Wait upon God now for salvation. Desperately seek it now. Plead with Him now for His steadfast love and for His mercy. Don't wait. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't keep putting salvation off. If that is you and you just keep putting it off every time, stop it. Wait upon God for the salvation He can give through Christ. And then have certain hope in Him and know His great faithfulness. And also, learn while you are young as well. Learn how to bear and endure in suffering and in turmoil, in pain, and in the guilt of sin. Learn how to bear and endure in these things so that you will be able to face it when you are old. You need to now be able to lay your burdens on God and rest in Him. You need to rest on God knowing He gives the mercies that you need in the moment that you need them. You need to learn this now. You need to set up these habits now when it's so much easier. Do it while you're young. And trust Him now. Trust Him now knowing He's dealt with sin. He's dealt with the suffering that sin brings through Jesus. He's dealt with it, and He's able to give new mercies forever to any sinner who turns to Jesus. So may God, in your life, may He break the bondage of sin. May He break the bondage of sin, and may He give mercy. May He break the chains of worry. May He break the burdens of suffering that are in your life at the moment with the promises of this passage, with the hope that we see in this passage, because we see the character of God and His great faithfulness. May God give you hope in all of life as you see his faithfulness. And may you trust God this week, knowing that God gives you the mercy that you need in the moment you need it. Stop trying to get all of the resources you think you need for future troubles, and trust God to give the mercy you need in the moment that you need it. Come, rely on God, because great is his faithfulness, and his mercies are new every morning.